Hello everyone, welcome to the last episode of Itchy Mysteries for 2016. I'm your host John Lorden, and today we're going to count down my top 10 picks for media that I've reviewed on both Itchy Mysteries and some episodes of the old Geek and Dorks review show, but all of them in the true crime mystery vein. So what are my top picks? And keep in mind, these are just for shows that or pieces of art that I have reviewed within primarily this past year, but the art might have been created well before that. This is not a list of just the best of 2016, but the best of things that I reviewed in 2016. So just so we get that clear. So let's get this thing started with number 10. At number 10, I have There's Something Wrong with Aunt Diane. And this is a film that still sticks with me. It, of course, has a very troublesome mystery in it, what exactly went on with Aunt Diane. But outside of that, it is also a deep view into family dynamics, why the answers to this mystery are not clear, I think lie in some of those family dynamics. It's a very telling story. The production got a hold of all the right people, interviewed them at length, and despite the fact that you may feel a little inconclusive or you're left with questions at the end, it's a very well-rounded piece, and I certainly think it deserves to be on this list. So that is my number 10. Coming in at number 9, and this is why I earlier said art, is actually a book. And I know most of the time I review documentaries, but this book really hit me in kind of the right way. It is A Case for Murder, The Brittany Murphy Files. And this book I really appreciate because of its approach to the topic, because it takes you through kind of the popular theory, but it also takes you through the other theories that people are talking about. And once again, the author got a hold of the right people, included that information in there. If I remember right, in my original review, I said there was one little aspect in particular that I wish he would have done a little more research on and included in the book. But outside of that, considering the scope of this mystery, I think that he did a really, really good job, and that's definitely why it is on this list, and I do think it deserves its place at number 9. Number 8, and this is a little bit of a fudging because it's actually 3 movies, but I'm including it all in one line, the Paradise Lost series. And this series really, it's interesting for me because the series kind of focuses on specific people in part 1, it focuses on other people in part 2, and then it kind of retracts that focus in part 3. And to some people, they might find that frustrating. They might say, hey, look, these filmmakers either didn't know what they were talking about in these earlier parts, or for some reason they changed their mind or were swayed by these people at later times. I've found in my experience, particularly with some of the investigations that I've done that have gone on for longer periods of time, that is a very natural thing to occur. You focus on one particular area, you research the heck out of it, and sometimes you find out something, and that actually changes your point of view. To see that happen over the course of 3 films, I think is a much more honest and true aspect of how these investigations can sometimes go. And if you are not changing your mind, it might mean that you're either not seeking out new information, or that your biases are so strong that even if there is new information that's presented, you're not willing to shift your mindset there. And in that case, you have to wonder, is a person like that really looking for the truth, or are they just looking for someone to reaffirm the beliefs that they already have? So I think the Paradise Lost series is an example, particularly if you watch all 3, of a very natural curve that can occur when you're looking into a case for so long. At number 7, The Imposter. This one really, really surprised me, and it's one of the few where you get to kind of spend time with someone that you might consider the villain of the story. But in him telling that story, you find out that maybe he wasn't the only one that was doing something wrong there. This story really took some interesting turns for me. There's something strange in that the imposter himself is kind of likable in a very odd way, considering what he's doing, basically stepping into someone else's life. There's just something about how he speaks and the way that they built the story up around him and made this documentary that is somewhat likable in a very odd way. So it's certainly deserves to be on the list. I know it's a popular one. I know a lot of you out there wanted me to watch it, and I'm so happy that I did. Number 6, Soaked in Bleach. And of course, this is the one about the Kurt Cobain story, which is something I've also covered on Brain Scratch. But I have to say, as far as true crime documentaries go, this one has so many pieces firing right in so many different ways that I had to include it on this list. If this list wasn't so good, it quite honestly could have been closer to the top. But there are a lot of excellent true crime documentaries that we're going to get to. But that being said, Soaked in Bleach was very good about including the real fact, but doing it in a very artistic and interesting way. They hired actors. There are dramatized scenes. Dramatized. I think it's dramatized. Let's simplify the language a little bit. The dramatized scenes are very engaging. I love how they mixed. In particular, they would take some audio from Courtney Love and they kind of mixed that with some dramatizations that they had shot. So I haven't seen something done in such a creative way and still held true to the true elements of the story. So I think Soaked in Bleach is a really good choice. And if you haven't seen it, I highly, highly recommend it. Number 5, and this is not just a documentary, but pretty much an entire show, The Killing Season. And you've probably heard me talk about this one lately. It's been a big topic. It starts by looking into the Gilgo Beach murders, but then it certainly goes much beyond that. And I do think that this show, especially for its first season, was very, very strong. I hope that they continue it, and I could see this format evolve even a little bit further from what we got in the first season and just kind of be this open-ended chase of investigations. So a bit like what I do on Brain Scratch, except they are much more hands-on out in the field. So I really, really want to see more of it, and I do believe that it deserves its place at number 5. If I remember right, I actually rated it, I think, a 9, and I have to say, for everything on this list above the number 5 spot and number 5, these are all at least 9s to me, and number 1 might even be a 10, but hold up, we're not there yet. All right, so number 4, The Jinx. Now, The Jinx, just a very troubling story overall. You get this kind of rich upbringing, and does that truly corrupt someone? Can they live in this other reality so long that they start to act out in ways that they don't expect to have to pay back or to pay for? It's a sad story on many, many fronts. And it has a very, very shocking moment at the end that twists the case in the real world in a whole new direction. And for me personally, when a piece of art is able to change events about that case that are occurring in the real world, I think that that is a very, very strong piece of art, and The Jinx is a great example of that. Another good example of that, heading up to number 3, which I'm sure all of you, if not all of you, 99% of you know about already, Making a Murderer. And this was the series that really made a big splash this past year. Once again, we have a documentary that takes you to another place. Not many of us are not familiar with that way of living. Being in that type of an area and meeting those types of interesting characters, then you get the actual elements of a case where, a man was tried for something, convicted for it, served a bunch of time, and it turned out he was innocent. And then there's a second crime, and they're basically trying to pin that on him, and we as viewers don't know if it is true or not. And then, of course, by the end of this story, if you do follow up on the aftermath of it and watch the news frequently, there are even developments still currently spinning out that I believe are a result of this documentary series. So very, very strong contender, comes in at number 3. Number 2, The Staircase. This is a series that might be more of a personal pick for me. When I started thinking about this list, it was one that popped up very, very quickly in my mind. I really enjoyed this series because it doesn't try to directly solve the murder case that's going on in it. It is much more about the defense team, almost following them as a primary character. And you kind of take this ride along with them, where there's moments where even they're wondering, hey, is this guy really innocent or is he indeed guilty? It is just really well done with a bunch of people that are very passionate, that it was a joy for me to watch, because you get to see people that are, fighting for justice. And it's not common. In many of these stories you see where it looks like justice is being mishandled, or justice is being stalled, or just being wiped out altogether in certain cases. And in this case, particularly with this defense team, there is a very strong question about the justice system and does it indeed work. Outside of that, there is an extremely compelling murder mystery that goes on in this case. It doesn't quite have the same type of impact as Making a Murderer or the Jinx in terms of spinning the case in a new direction, but they did do a follow-up where they've added a couple of episodes to the end that I think is really compelling stuff. If you haven't seen it, I highly, highly recommend you check out The Staircase. All right, here we are, number 1. You guys know what I'm going to pick. I've talked about it in several videos before. Dear Zachary, a letter to a son about his father. I'm sorry, but ever since I first saw that film, it has absolutely stuck with me. There's something about it that is so beautiful in one way. Even the title, A Letter to a Son About His Father, it really kind of encapsulates this spirit of this documentary. It has wonderful access to the subject matter. It has a bunch of footage of these, in particular about the father that it's talking about in his early years, and then this tremendous story about his son and what goes on there. And it has a twist in the ending that no one could have seen. There's one particular segment where just if you're a filmmaker of any kind, if you're an editor, if you're a director, possibly if you're even an actor, if you want to see one of the most intriguing segments that I've ever seen in a documentary that truly feels like a nightmare come to life that you are brought in the middle of, you have to see this film and see what this family goes through with the tragedies that occur in this film. And the strange thing is, there's a juxtaposition to that in the beauty of this director that is telling this story and really talking about his love for the people that are involved in this story. It's really, for me, it is a stand-up documentary. If any of these are a 10 on my scale of 1 to 10, I have to say Dear Zachary is absolutely that 10. It's a film that I have this feeling that I will certainly watch again. I know that there's tough aspects to watching it, but there's so much beauty that is kind of built in and wrapped around that as well, that it's one of those things that you're going to go through. It just hits you on the emotional spectrum in so many different places. It is such good filmmaking and storytelling, and then the events that actually occur are somewhat shocking, and there's this overall tone, despite those shocking events, of hope, and how people can be truly amazing in how they can recover and deal with situations where a lot of us would say, wow, well, that would just kill me. I wouldn't be able to go on with my life. And this film is a perfect example of people that do have to make that decision to go on with their life. There's people that you're rooting for in this movie so strongly. It's extremely moving. So for me, Dear Zachary, A Letter to a Son About His Father is my number 1 pick. All right, here's where I turn it over to you. You guys get to tell me, is this list close? Do you think that other movies should be in here that I have reviewed? Remember, I have to have reviewed them at least. I might not know about them. And if I don't know about them, you could tell me about that in the comments below as well. Thank you so much for a very interesting year. This was, at the start of this year, we didn't even have a show called Itchy Mysteries. It was Geek and Dorks Reviews, but here we've kind of found our focus and found our footing, and I appreciate all of you that support this little show that could on my channel. Might not be as popular as some of my other shows, but it brings enough of you that I keep doing it. And there's something about this type of work for me. I like watching films like this. In some cases, it directly involves things that I'm already investigating, so I'm going to watch these things anyway. But outside of that, there is another aspect to filmmaking and to telling these stories, and that influences my work in other ways too. So I appreciate these films. I know some of you out there do, so I wanted to thank you guys for supporting Itchy Mysteries. And if you haven't seen any of these or read the book, A Case for Murder, Brittany Murphy Files, I highly, highly recommend you do so. I don't think you'll be disappointed, particularly if you're a fan of Brain Scratch and looking for the truth. Which, if you're subscribed to this channel, I really hope you're one of those people. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and I'll catch you on the next show on the Lord Marks channel.